This is the e-learning podcast, episode number 72.
Essentially, what we are is, first and primarily, an open funding source for core development. But as Thomas added, secondly, we are a large community of dedicated Moodlers who really want to see the project succeed and move in a fashion that makes sense.
Welcome to the e-learning podcast. My name is Ladek, and I'm your host from lmspulse.com. As many of you know, Moodle is the most popular learning management system in the world. But despite being free and open source, which means anybody can contribute to its growth, it's not always easy if you're not a developer or if you don't know what other people want to get out of the LMS. That's where the Moodle Users Association comes in. My guests for today, the chairman is Thomas Korner and vice chairman Mike Churchward, discuss what the MUA is and what Moodle means today and what we should expect from the future of open source learning technology. In this very engaging conversation, we talk about how Moodle gets made and the role of the users and the MUA in the shape of Moodle and its growth. We also talk about how to strike a model of community based on collaboration that feels intimate and attentive to every voice while continuing to grow massively. We also talk about why, for its leaders, the MUA means governance and how they plan to increase the long-term influence of user-based initiatives into Moodle and the e-learning space as a whole. We also talk about the perils and challenges of open source and why community building is key for the sustainability of the project, as well as for individuals' reasons to volunteer. And then finally, Thomas and I talk about the future of Moodle and open source communities, as well as whether or not survival, as Thomas believes, is a matter of fostering a decentralized online learning ecology. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The e-learning podcast is sponsored by the eLearn Success Series, a uniquely valuable set of events that bring together sector experts and thought leaders to offer solutions to the most critical challenges and issues at the intersection of education and technology. Get your free ticket to all 4 sessions at elearnsuccessseries.com. And Open LMS, a company that provides world-class LMS solutions that empower organizations to meet education and workplace learning needs. Learn more by visiting openlms.net.
Hello, Thomas, and hello, Mike. Welcome to the e-learning podcast. Thomas, how are you today?
Thank you very much. Great, and you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Mike, and how are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Excellent. Sounds like the interwebs are working for us. Thomas, where do we find you sitting today? I'm assuming that you're not standing on a hill in front of ETH right now.
No, I'm at home in home office, and it's later at night, so I'm quite comfortable here.
Excellent. And you are in Zurich, yes?
Yes, well, nearby, 20 kilometers away. And for the US situation, this is kind of in Zurich, yeah. But it's a small town.
Fantastic. And Mike, where we find you sitting today?
No, I'm sitting in my office in a town called Tavistock, which is a small town in Ontario, Canada, kind of situated between London and Toronto.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Home office that I've been sitting in for many, many years.
As it should be. I mean, I've often joked with people. I said, what do you mean the pandemic changed everything? I've been sitting in my home office for 15 years now. I don't know what the difference is.
Exactly.
Both of you are Thomas, you're the chairman, and Mike, you're the vice chairman of something called the Moodle Users Association. Something that's been around, I guess, it's going on 5-6 years now.
I think we're in the 6th year, yeah.
6 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in our 6th year because I am lucky enough to know, LMS Pulse used to be called Moodle News. And, Joe Tebow, the founder of Moodle News, he was a huge proponent of getting the Moodle User Association started. We actually kind of had some rallying, some raising some money and waving the flag for it. So I'm really excited to be talking to both of you today. But before we dive into what the MUA is all about and where it's going, what's happening today, Thomas, why don't you give us the 30 seconds on who you are, where you teach, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My name is Thomas Korner. Live in Switzerland, work for the ETH Zurich, one of the main technical universities in Europe, I would say, for 15 years now, working there in the edtech part of DTH. And well, I'm responsible for Moodle for about 10 years now, and jumped into the MUA about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I think. Well, and yeah, became a lecturer at DTH, and working now quite into how to help teachers to make the education even better.
Fantastic.
And in time, Corona.
Thank you very much. Mike, what about yourself? What's the 30 seconds on where you teach, who you are, and what you focus on?
Well, I don't teach, but I'm a developer, and I've been a Moodle developer since, I'm going to say 2004, 2005, when it was in its infancy. I started as basically a contractor that discovered Moodle and discovered open source at the same time. Prior to that, I'd always been in commercial software. Open source was kind of a weird thing to even consider. Why would you give away everything that you're putting your blood into? But I've never looked back since then. And I continue to develop with Moodle now. I've been with a few companies, one of which I started on my own, and now I'm with a new startup, which I'm really enjoying. And yeah, as I said before, I'm situated in Canada, in Ontario, in a small town sitting in kind of southwestern Ontario.
Love it. I love the aha moment. You know, I mean, for you, it happened quite some time ago when you're like, you know what, why would you do open source? And then you see it and you're like, wow, this is really the open source movement. And then, you know, doing open source software can be really, really cool. And has really, you know, had tons of advantages, something that maybe we can talk about today. If you wouldn't mind, Thomas, tell us what the Moodle User Association is today. Like, it's obviously evolved over the last 4 or 5 years since it's in existence. It's kind of come into its own. Tell us about, you know, why was it formed? What was its purpose? And, you know, how is it fulfilling that purpose today?
Well, the mastermind behind the Moodle Users Association was Martin Duguiamas himself, the founder and CEO of Moodle, who, well, decided or found out that probably the connection to the end users of Moodle is a bit weak for HQ people. And additionally, as we already discussed, there are some advantages of open source development, and you have one disadvantage, well, at least one, and this one is who would pay for this development. And so therefore, one of his intention was also to get some crowdsourced money for core development. Okay. And what we are today, well, we are a group of very dedicated Moodle users, some bigger institutions, universities, but also individuals who really are into Moodle and well, have a close relationship to each other, to HQ, and to the community. Okay, Mike, something to add?
Yeah, Mike, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I mean, essentially, what we are is, I mean, first and primarily an open funding source for core development. But as Thomas added, secondly, we are a large community of dedicated Moodlers who really want to see the project succeed and move in a fashion that makes sense.
Mike, I'd love to just have you dig a little deeper, because there are probably, you know, there's plenty of people, I'm going to say probably 60% of the audience, that will not have any idea what does core development mean. So like maybe break it a little apart for me. Like, how does Moodle, you know, just the 2-minute tutorial on how does Moodle work, and, you know, what does core development might mean as opposed to plugin development or you know, those kinds of things.
Sure. Well, now how it works, I'm going to assume you don't mean technologically, but
no,
I mean how Moodle, how Moodle as a project works. Yeah,
exactly.
How Moodle as a platform and an ongoing entity of its own works is that it has, okay, so historically it had a group of dedicated developers who, like myself, who took it upon themselves to keep building this product in a way that made sense. It has always taken huge amounts of input from the educational community, because the developers who seem to have find their way into that actually know that we should not make the decisions about how to do things. We should just build what other people wanted to do. So that has been historically. Now, as Moodle grew to become, you know, the world's most prominent platform for LMSs, it had to establish itself in a much more regimental way. It, had to come up with processes to actually make it, and as such, they actually became employees of Moodle. They're known as the core developers.
Okay.
So I honestly, I don't know what the numbers are right now, but there are a certain number of developers Moodle employs to continually develop Moodle. Much of their time is spent integrating contributions from the community that go into core and testing and making sure that everything works properly. There's a huge amount of automated processes involved in testing and making sure things don't break other things that have been working for years. And so the difference between saying core development versus other things are Moodle is also an extremely extensible platform through what's known as plugins. And there's a numerous number of styles of plugins, and as well as a huge amount of a community of developed plugins to fit each one of those. Those are not core development. Those are things that are done from the community, from educational institutions or independents like myself. Once in a while, those things do find their way into core when enough people actually really want it. And the reason you would care about that is if it's in core, it's going to be continually maintained. There's always a risk with plugins that a plugin developer might just finally give up and walk away, and suddenly your value plugin's no longer working. But there's also a huge community of people who will jump in and take over that. So, that's kind of the difference between, say, core and plugin, or core and community. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I want to ask both of you. Obviously, Mike, you're a developer. You've been on this, and Thomas, are you representing the educational side, or are you also a developer as well?
No, I'm not a developer. I'm representing the educational part, but also I do have a Moodle team with me at ETH, and we do have two developers who do some with us. It's question types we are developing most of the time, and we do share them as well. Just to give some numbers to what Mike said, we do have about 150 plus thousand Moodle installations worldwide, and these are very various, from a kindergarten to the biggest open source universities available in the world. And we have about 1,900 plugins available. So to the core, you can choose from 1,900 plugins. And this makes, if you combine them, then basically every installation is a bit different from each other. And that's a good thing about open source. So we can go and say, well, we make a lot of online examination at ETH Zurich. We say, well, we do need this special kind of question type. And an open source software like Moodle made it possible for us to just develop this and put it in as it would be a core, a part of Moodle, which is served for everybody. So it's that's the big thing about open source.
Yeah,
possibility for us as a bigger university to just contribute and do what we think is the best to use.
So where I'd like to go next is, Mike, you said it well earlier, just, as an open source project, sometimes it's hard to know, what's going to be the next, what's the next focus for, building out core, or what's the next, big leap that we're going to try to implement in the next iteration of the software, whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
So take us, either, I'm not sure who'd like to take this question, but how does the Moodle User Association work? Like what can you kind of take us through the process? I know that I'll let you answer the question, but, take us through the different cycles throughout the year of finding projects, voting on projects, deciding what will happen next, and then those funding options. And, can you kind of take us through, what would happen during a year in the Moodle User Association? And Mike, is that for you, or is that Thomas? Is that better you?
I'll let Thomas take that one. That's like, I'll help him out as he goes.
Basically, Mike is responsible for the project cycle, so I will do it. Yeah. Well, as I said, one of the big topics of the Moodle Users Association is this funding for Moodle, and it is packed into what we call a project cycle. So it is easy for every member possible to submit a project proposal. This could be this kind of, if I'm deleting something, and this is an actual case, this was the first project developed.
I believe Joe Tebow actually put this one on there.
could be. If I delete something, it's gone, and that's not how I like to have it. Why don't we put into a recycle bin into Moodle, which allows me to restore things I deleted accidentally? So he put that forward. There was a reshaping, an evaluation period with HQ and with internal help. And then at the moment, there are 2 votings because we normally have too many projects proposed that we can directly go into a final voting. But there is a voting process where every member can vote on projects, depending on the level of membership. So there are individual members, there are organizational members with basically different amount of money they pay. They won't own the project. And if then at the end of this kind of iteration, there is a winning project, and this project will be then shaped, contracted with HQ. Money goes to HQ, so they have a funding for HQ developers. But giving back, they develop a plugin for us or a change for us into Moodle. And so we do have really, I think, the only possibility, if you have this great idea, what should be in Moodle, then you can come with the $100 which costs you an individual membership, bring a great idea into core directly. If you can convince the other members. And another project, if you know Moodle, the dashboard, the whole dashboard idea came out of the Moodle Users Association as well, or at least part of them, how it works and how it is organized. Yeah. So
yeah, it's real fundamental. Part. Yeah, like it's a real, it's a way to affect the future of the open source project in a very specific way. Characterize for me how many in general, how many members are a part of the association, and then like what is it truly global? Are they from all over the world? Are they all from all different associations institutions and organization types and individuals, or are you still working on creating more the robustness of the association?
So I think Thomas was looking for the real numbers. So I can see him looking there. So, I mean, but the answer without numbers is yes, we represent the world. And before Thomas gives you the numbers, so just to kind of fill in a bit more on that, that was kind of the point of the MUA to begin with, was to try to represent the largest global group of Moodle users. And I don't mean like just the individual students. I mean the people that actually use it, depend on it, et cetera. Have that voice to be able to work with HQ to make sure that Moodle is working in a way that everybody wanted to. The project cycles was the plan for that. Was it's a very democratic system. The only thing that is kind of unfortunately democratic is it is $1 per vote, which means that you can buy votes. But what we found is that literally that's not what people are putting their money in for. So what we haven't seen yet, we have not seen any large group of people try to get together and take the Moodle project down a path that nobody wanted it to go. In fact, what we have seen is, I want to work with everybody. So let's talk to HQ. What are the plans for Moodle? Let's try to align our projects with the way we all see it going, including Martin and et al. And I think we've seen quite a huge improvement that way with the way the projects are going. Is it really is people interested in funding what Moodle should be, and not what they think it should be, but what we all think it should be. Cool. And I've been really impressed with that, especially with the way it's going. So the $1 a vote thing, to Thomas's point, I think more than half of our projects now have been proposed by individual members. So they're not large organizations. They're actually the people who paid their $100 a year. Their projects became the ones that were most popular and were the ones that got into Moodle. So there is a huge amount of influence you have even as an individual member.
That's pretty cool. I mean, if you just to let that explode in people's minds for a second, like that, this is one person who obviously they pay their fee $100, and let's just say, take that recycle bin, thing. You've just literally affected millions of people. by
Correct.
with that, like, you've and that's power. That's really intense. Thomas, any other thoughts there? Any other pieces that you wanted to add to that?
Well, you're expecting the number, right?
Yeah, give me the number. I want to know the numbers. Hit me.
It is about 150.
Okay.
We had the AGM 2 months ago, and the number increased since then. So we have more or less 150, and about, well, a bit more than a third are institutional members. So taking just the number is probably a little bit difficult, because if you go for an open university, then you have, I don't know, 800 teachers,
Sure.
lecturers, or 1,000 lecturers, then thousands of students who are affected by only one membership. So we do have 100, more or less 150 members, most a third of them institutional, and that makes a kind of a good mixture. And that brings me to a next point. If I have an issue, if I have a question, if I'm seeking for a plugin or for an idea or whatever, as you can imagine, we do have some forums, Telegram group, and things like that. I just shout in and say, "Hey guys, I'm searching for example, chatbot." Was one thing I did 2 weeks ago, and you get responses from people, probably from members who never ever stood up since they are a member, but they are using chatbots and they are very interested in developing it. So we have a kind of a smaller circle, kind of an inner circle. If it comes to Moodle Forum, the official one, Moodle.org forum, there you have the huge community. And this community is very diverse. It is even more powerful, but it sometimes feels a little bit of shouting into the forest and not sure what is coming back. So this intimate, or a little bit more intimate circle is also something which I really appreciate about
That's fantastic. You guys don't get paid for this.
No.
So
We do not.
Why, you're I mean, Mike, you're a busy software developer. Thomas, you are a busy professor. And I'm sure you've got families and side projects and friends and all that kind of stuff.
Used to, yeah.
Well played. Well played. Well played. Why was the MUA something that you said, yes, I'm going to raise my hand. I'm interested in, essentially I don't want to say thankless, but, but definitely a position that a lot of people don't really maybe appreciate to the extent necessary. Like, why was this, maybe Thomas, I'll give this to you first. Why was this important for you?
Well, probably I have to add, I'm a part of an institutional member. So basically I am paid for doing what I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
But the university is not paid for it. So the university is contributing my working time. But the answer is kind of similar. We ended up in saying, well, we use Moodle a lot, and well, it's crucial for us that it works. So therefore, we would like to give something back. That was the initial part of becoming member, giving something back, giving money back, and also having influence. And about 3 years ago, when I joined the committee, we decided, okay, it became even more important for us, and we would like to give more. We would like to contribute. We would like to give back. We are a public funded university, so it's also, this is also the reason why we are using open source. It's this kind of, we are funded by the people. We would like to give something back to the people, and wouldn't it be great if we can do the greatest open source LMS in the world, if we can make it even better with our personal contribution? That is the reason.
Love it. Mike, anything to add to that about your personal reason why you decided to step up to the plate?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I do have my own personal agenda as well, but like everybody on the committee, our current livelihoods depend on Moodle. So, whether or not we're actually paid to be on the MUA or not, we definitely have a financial interest in Moodle's success. And that would be, I wouldn't say it was a primary reason that I joined, but because I had hooked myself up to Moodle so tightly, it kind of made sense for me to be involved in something like this. When I joined, I was part of a Moodle partner. I'm no longer part of a Moodle partner, but I still am part of a Moodle company that develops code for Moodle. And just to be able to see how things we're going to go and be able to help continue to make it successful did make sense. My own personal agendas, I do want to see the MUA to continually, I would like to see it grow a lot, because I do believe that Moodle HQ and Martin themselves would love to see MUA become a community of governance per se, that one that actually be relied on to truly guide the path of Moodle and kind of alleviate that from what HQ is doing. That's always been my goal. We're getting there in dribs and drabs. Part of the biggest issue we do have is, to your point, is that we are not paid by the MUA. So it's really the spare time we can wrench out of our lives to be able to do it. So part of our goal is, if we can get big enough, we can actually have more people hired as the MUA who actually focus on these things and make those things happen. I mean, that's the same problem any kind of a not-for-profit or an organization has, right? Is how do you use the money in a way that actually gets the things done? And then sometimes you have to hire people. We actually have 2 people on staff now. We have Nuria, who's responsible for marketing. So she's been helping us with getting some marketing message out there, which is one of those chicken and egg things. It's hard to bring people on if you don't make noise. So she's helping us make that noise. And then we have Steve Miley, who's been with Moodle for a long, long time, who just retired from the university he was at last year. And he approached us and said, I'd like to work as the project, or the administrator role that we have. And the administrator role is not named aptly enough, really, because essentially does whatever we all can't do, whatever we can't find time for. So, that it's really nice to have people. And what we need to do is grow to the point where we can have more of that and have somebody, like eventually have where the chair job would actually be a full-time position that somebody's actually paid to do. But we're not there yet. That's our goal.
It's a really interesting. I've never, I admit that it was not a vision in my vision for the MUA to have this as something that could ultimately be a governance of continuity, provide that sort of, hey, here's the project, and we're actually going to be a body that's has perpetuity and is self-funding and self-regulating, and that's actually, would you agree that kind of that's the embodiment of the of open of what the open source movement would be all about, right? It's a self-governing body that where people are elected by and so not only are you developing the tool that everybody relies on, but then actually how it's governed is also a part of that as well. Does that make sense? Am I crazy? Absolutely.
No, you're not. And I mean the thing is, it will always have to work in a compatible way with HQ, because Martin is Moodle. He's not going to give that up. We don't expect him to. We would never want him to, right? So whatever we do, we have to make sure that
was my next question. You knew that,
right? We have to follow that same direction, right? And that's actually been one of the great advantages I've seen the last couple of years, is from those members that have joined the MUA. That's one of their big concerns, is, are we doing what Moodle really wants? And let's make sure we are. So while they do bring new ideas in, they also are like, but we also want to make sure that we're working together and not working against each other. So that's kind of the way it goes. And we've had one of our committee members now is, oh my goodness, Thomas, his name has just left my brain. Our new committee members, he was the chair of the Moodle Association of Japan.
The Don Hinkleman, you mean?
Thank you, Don Hinkleman.
Never fails. You turn on the camera, you turn on the microphone, and all information leaves your brain. I
will apologize to Don now after he sees this. I'm sorry I forgot your name. But yeah, he was with the Moodle Association of Japan, and he's joined us, and he has similar goals. He wants to see the MUA become a global organization that actually manages things like conferences, and at such time when we can actually do them again, in-person conferences. And I think that is a great goal, because it's a reach right now, but it's not unreachable. And I think that's where the MUA really becomes a thing, when they really are this worldwide organization that is actually not only funding Moodle, but is becoming part of Moodle. And I think that's where we really want to be.
I love the vision there. It's a reach, but it's not unreachable. Somebody needs to quote that immediately. That's fantastic. Thomas, you wanted to add something there.
Yeah, and it's but we already had somebody from Japan in the committee, but now once again with Don, we are spread over 17 hours time zone, and well, that makes it kind of you asked the question whether we are really globally. We try to, We tried to go into Southern America, for example. So we translated a part of the website already into Spanish and Portuguese. We do have a committee member who speak Portuguese and Spanish, and so we try to get into there, knowing that probably if it comes to money, it could become difficult for institutions there to really afford the membership. But we are not seeking primarily for the money. We are seeking for the opinions there. And that is something what I experience in the MUA as well. You come out from a small country, and in Switzerland you kind of fast get some connections to the rest of Europe. But only since I'm in the committee and in the MUA, I realized that there are a lot of different opinion and ways to see, way to teach, way to use Moodle all around the world. And that made a big difference for my experience.
Super cool. I was thinking myself as well, we've on this particular show, we've had, there's one woman who comes to mind whose unfortunately name is escaping me right now, but she's the ed tech administrator in the middle of the Congo. Right. And I'm just thinking,
wow.
100 Australian per year is, I won't say she can't do it, but that would probably be a very significant investment. Right. Whereas for somebody else, that's a dinner out, and so, finding a way to create balance across the sort of global spectrum. There's literally hundreds of millions of users and people that rely on Moodle. So that's really interesting. Personally, yourselves, Thomas, I'll start with you. What kind of impact would you like to have in your tenure here? And, or maybe you have a bigger vision about what kind of impact you want the association to have. Is there a personal kind of goal that you'd love to see happen, or I'll leave it there for you.
It's a good question. I would agree with Mike that I would like to leave the committee one day, knowing that the MUA has made a way down the road, became bigger, and became more the voice of users. For me, it's always have been very important, not primarily the money or the projects. I would love to see the MUA as the voice of user towards developer. And that doesn't mean kind of a battle. It just means that, hey, we are very close to lecturers. I can reach out hundreds of students and lecturers in a kind of a nutshell. And so the other MUA members. And this is kind of a source which could help Moodle become an even better LMS and user-focused LMS. Let's say it like this. And I think the MUA could play a kind of an important role in that jigsaw.
Thanks. Mike, anything that you'd like to see personally, or that you have a kind of personal vision that you'd like to have an impact somehow?
Well, I mean, my personal vision is kind of, as I stated before, which I really would like to see the MUA become, governance might be overstated, but definitely the community of influence, the community that drives the project. I think that can lead into a style of governance, but obviously one that's not necessarily draconian, but it doesn't get to dictate things, but
sure.
But definitely can influence. And personally, like Thomas said, yeah, I would like to be able to leave the MUA. I'm not saying that's my goal. I'd like to be able to leave the MUA knowing that it is actually going to continue to run successfully. That we actually, I would love to see us. I don't know if it can happen in the next year, but I would love to see us grow to the point where we can literally hire that person who runs the MUA and then maybe uses the volunteers for assistance. I do want to point out that the people who volunteer to be on the committee dedicate a lot of time and effort to it, and as you pointed out, that a lot of that comes out of their own free time when they can grab it. And once in a while we get frustrated. It's like I can't find that time, but they don't give up that dedication, and that's the thing I love. And I mean, we've got committee members from all over the place. Many of them have switched jobs while they've gone. So, I mean, you're very familiar with Moodle and its offshoots. I mean, many of those people started as Moodle partners and are now on Moodle forks that are being run in other businesses, right? And still have not given up that passion. And I think that's great. I mean, that's literally what I see inside the MUA. To Thomas's point, a lot of the people who join these institutions don't come so that they can figure out how to change Moodle in some way. They come because they just want to contribute back because Moodle's been so important to them.
Fantastic.
That's great, and let's grow that even further.
So on that note, we've talked a lot about what could become the MUA or what the MUA could become, and I think it's a really compelling vision, to be honest with you. What might that mean for how Moodle would look, let's just say, in 5 years or so? I mean, how do you see core changing? How do you see the community changing? How do you see the influence of Moodle in the next 5 years? Thomas, why don't we start with you? How do you see this evolving?
Mike, did you check our answer with Martin?
No,
joke.
He's picking up, for those who are listening, he's picking up a piece of paper and he will be reading from a script right now.
No, that's the great thing about open source. People who have influence, like probably it's a small one, but I think Mike and I do have a little bit of influence. We can say quite often quite openly our opinion, and we do not have to ask the CEO. But coming to your question, I would love to see Moodle be a kind of a centerpiece of an online learning ecology, which manages a lot of different styles, a lot of different ways, which brings as is out of the box a well-equipped but very open software, which is very usable. That's something I really like to see, that the UX of Moodle develops further, become a little bit more stylish, youngish, probably. And that this ecology could evolve in every direction. An institution or even just a teacher wants to have it. And probably it's quite. It will be a little bit difficult because if you have a look at the LMS world, then you always see the same progression. A new LMS comes out, it looks awesome, it is great to use, it has a UX which is very state of the art, but kind of a limited functionality. And then over the years, there are requests from users, requests from the CEO, from whoever, and it became more capable year after year. And if you have a look back 10, 15 years later, you see that it is kind of a difficult to use, a little bit oldish software. And this turnover is not easy. And if you have a look at the best example probably is Microsoft Word. If you would divide it newly, probably it won't look like it looks. But it is a kind of an established software, which is 2 decades old, 3 decades already. And it's always, even for this big company as a Microsoft, the difficulty to really stay on the latest development of the latest UX experience. And that is something I would wish for Moodle to make this jump in the next 5 years.
Nice. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I mean, what I want to see Moodle is continue to maintain its flexibility, and it becomes more flexible all the time, so that under the hood, a lot of the work that gets done with every major release makes the software that much more extensible, that much more maintainable, and that much more faster to be able to apply to the new times. I mean, the thing we've seen in the online education world, especially over the last couple of years, is people who never really thought they ever use online education suddenly had to focus on it. And what's become it's been a great data resource for what does this need to do. Before that, it was pretty much in standard educational institutions that always did things the same way, and that's the way the LMSs were built. Let's do it the way those things are. But over the last 2 years, when education had to figure out how to work in all areas using online methods, things changed. And that's what Moodle needs to be. Moodle needs to be that thing that can change all the time. Let's keep up with everything that's going. Technologically, there's always been talks about, well, we need to change to do this or that, or we need to change what we build it on. What we found is no, we don't, because we can actually because the technologies we're building it on also change and evolve and get better. So I think what we're seeing now in Moodle 4.0 is the focus on the UI, UX. Those are all good things. There's going to be some growing pains when that comes out. There's going to be some painful periods. But at the end of the day, I've seen what's going on underneath there. It'll be easy to make it do different things very quickly. Like, so that, you know, the velocity of which Moodle will be able to change is going to continue to grow. And I think that's the most important part. And, you know, I'm going to make a small pitch for what I do now. The other thing I really want to see Moodle become is accessible everywhere, like to everybody, right? There's no reason why anybody should be left out of a learning platform. You know, and that's what I really like. What I'm doing now in my own job is actually building those accessibility tools to help teachers make sure their content is actually available to everyone everywhere, right? That's we put that into 3.11 and it'll be continuing into 4.0 is the accessibility tools from a company, Brickfield, which actually does that. And then I think Moodle had a huge focus on that. We have to make sure that's there. So to me, that's the big thing. We are trying to come up with something flexible, something accessible, something that's always going to be there, something globally available worldwide that can be run by anybody. And I think that's what it needs to continue to go.
Yeah, but I think we found out over the last couple of years as well, accessibility is one of the online learning superpowers. I mean, it just has to be. And I love the way that the people over at Brickfield Labs described it, you know, that the accessibility isn't about, you know, bringing in those marginal groups that do have, you know, issues seeing or, you know, neurological issues. It's about creating something that works for everybody in the most awesome ways that includes everyone. I love the way that they spin that and look at it through that different lens. Gentlemen, final question.
I think that's really, just before we go, I think that's really become apparent during the pandemic years, because all of a sudden, all these people who had never had to work on or learn online before did need to learn online. And the teachers that really grabbed it, really grasped it, saw what they needed to do differently to make it work for all of those users. So yeah, it isn't just like to your point, it's not just accessibility. It's not just for people that can't see the page. It's for people who might not even be able to work with the page in that way, right? And I think that's where Moodle is going to be able to really fit that niche very well.
Fantastic. So I like to end each of these conversations by asking, what are you, both of you, and then we can go one by one, what are you most excited for over the next 6 to 12 months? And, you know, think outside the association, think outside, you know, kind of the bubble that you work in every day. Like, is there a shiny new object piece of tech? Is there an organization that you're excited about? Is there a new pedagogy? Is there a new process? Anything that you'd like to give a shout out to that you're like, wow, these guys are, you know, they're really doing something cool. Thomas, how about you first? What are you most excited about for the next 6 to 12 months? Getting out of my home office. No.
Well, for sure, it is Moodle 4.0. We worked on that very hard in the last years. I didn't mention the project I started with some colleagues some months ago, where we kind of revamped the quiz module. And this wouldn't have been possible without the MUA. So I'm the only one from the committee, but the others are members as well. So Luca Bush, Tim Hunt, Antonio Bonacorso, who are running this project. And we could kind of crowdsource. And that's, well, we put a lot of effort in there. And I love to see it land in the Moodle-verse in the world. That's the kind of the software part. And the other thing is a quite a personal one. I'm doing a certificate of advanced studies in agile organization, and this gives me a lot of new inputs into how to organize work, how to organize everything around me, and I'm very keen to see forward to finish this CAS and then implement the things. So that's my kind of very personal
cool
piece of the future.
Thanks for sharing. I really love that. That's fantastic. I love it. You know, we're all kind of we're within the same age, you know, range or whatever, but it's always great to like wake up and be like, wow, there's still stuff I can learn. I can still grow, you know. It's the youngins, they don't get it all. Damn. What about you, Mike? What are you looking forward to?
Sure. So what I'm looking forward to is a personal piece that is working with how Moodle is becoming. So I'm looking forward to my son actually joining the company full time in January. I've been training him to be a Moodle developer over the last 2 years, and he's really, really gotten into it. And so that's the personal thing. What I really like about that is this is a young developer who people say you can't bring them into this technologies because they're not going to like this. They want to do Python, they want to do Ruby on Rails, they do all these other things. And having the chance to train these young developers, my son being one, another 2 people in the Brickfield who've joined, who again just left school, they're actually loving learning development in an open source world. They've discovered the greatness of having to have your code out there and being able to see it with everybody else's. And I think where Moodle has going under the hood, where, you know, people like Andrew have pushed it, the code is becoming so much more modern that the young people coming in as developers are loving working in this tool and being able to learn development and become better developers. And as you pointed out earlier, when you said, hey, you know, an individual can get this feature in a Moodle and it's affecting hundreds and thousands or millions of people out there. Every one of these developers, when they push something into core, and I go, now understand your name is now available to millions of people.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
just influence the way the world learns.
Yeah, that is
blows their mind.
Yeah, it really, I mean, what a great, I mean, put that on your CV. You know what I mean? Like put that on your LinkedIn and be like, oh, by the way, you know, that checkbox that's in there, that I wrote that, you know, that's really cool.
Yep, exactly. So that's it. I'm looking forward to these new developers really discovering Moodle and pushing it forward with what they've learned in their schooling and education, and I think hopefully exciting their peers who will then cascade out, and we're going to see more of that youth coming into Moodle.
Fantastic. I love that we're tying this conversation in a bow with yet another passing of the torch, and you know, how does this the Moodle project continue into the future? Absolutely fantastic. Thomas Korner, Mike Churchward, both, you know, the chair and vice chair of the Moodle Users Association. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show today.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the eLearning Podcast. If you like what you heard, please do me the favor of following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whichever social media you prefer. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper on e-learning, I encourage you to get your free ticket to the eLearning Success Summit, where there are more than 70 hours of presentations on best practices. Just go to elearningsuccesssummit.com. And then finally, for the latest news, information, and resources about e-learning, come subscribe to our newsletter at lmspulse.com. Thanks.